focus in on what is really going to move the needle. And I think that's going to be spending the time to do the quality outreach, to write the quality content, to get those quality relevant links. And that is where we're going to have success in 2025 these days. Hi, I'm Vince Nero, and this is SEO in 2025 Additional Insights.
Vince, what's your additional insight for SEO in 2025?
So my insight is following the less is more approach. And that really expands across everything from the content that you write, the outreach that you do, the links that you get. The more focus that we can, the less, I think it's going to help you really hone in on the quality of everything you're doing, which, as we'll hopefully talk about here, David, is really the key to success, I think, in 2025 and beyond.
So do you think that less automatically leads to more quality, or is quality something that you also have to work at in tandem with less is more?
Right. Great question. And it's easy to kind of take away from this that you could just do less. No, I mean, right. This is a harder task than it might seem on the surface. I mean, doing less doesn't mean just pulling back, writing one post for a month or something. But if you focus in on doing the best that you can do, spend the time that you would normally writing 5 posts and write a really great, relevant quality post that's really targeted to your audience. That's kind of what I mean by less is more. And you could apply that again across things like link building. If you are trying to generate links, you can generate hundreds of links that might not do anything, but you could also focus on all that time on one specific link, 10 specific links, really focusing in on, a journalist or a specific site that you really think is highly relevant, highly quality. And that's going to move the needle a lot more than just this big approach.
Great. Okay. So you started off talking about the importance of targeting the right audience and writing for them. How do you measure the relevancy of what you intend to do?
Also, another great question. I mean, I think this is something that SEOs are starting to kind of get more into. And I think this is even more applicable in like the AI age. There's kind of like the technical route, and you get into things in the AI realm that talk about relevancy and how they kind of break up content. The LLMs and AI technology breaks up content into, different nodes and all these different, technical jargon. But then there's the flip side of the kind of more just qualitative approach where I like to say it's like, if I was the customer, if I was reading this, if I was a journalist or a blogger and I'm receiving my email, would I take action on it? Would I read this and say, oh, this makes sense? I think as SEOs and content marketers, and I'm 1,000% guilty of this myself, it's like you start to get too caught up in the metrics and these vanity metrics of, oh, how much organic traffic can I bring? How many links can I bring? And you start to lose focus of the things that move the needle. And, I think this is even harder for agencies because you typically have a lot of KPIs that you have to hit, and they're usually link numbers or traffic numbers. And at the end of the day, if these links and traffic aren't ultimately supporting the bottom line of a company, your time is limited, I should say, as an agency. And, if you're in-house, same deal. So to kind of answer your question, I think more directly, it's trying to think about the end user when you're doing anything. How is this going to impact the end user? And at my time at BuzzStream here, I think I've had a great support network. I mean, we're a small team, but Stephen Panico is the CMO here, and Paul May, founder, kind of had done a great job, because I came from an agency background. They've done a great job at kind of making sure I'm not just publishing stuff for search, which was kind of a mindset switch for me. I mean, obviously all the stuff I did in an agency was end user focused, but I still had that like agency mindset, right? And some of these lingering bad practices of focusing on vanity metrics. So whenever I write stuff these days, it's always this focus on is this actually helpful? Is this actually relevant? Is this something that people can actually take and do something with?
So you mentioned the phrase end user a couple of times there as well. Do you have an avatar of an ideal customer in mind? And if so, how do you go about building that?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely do. I think have a couple. Like with BuzzStream, we know it's kind of a mix between agency users and in-house, and I'd say primarily link builders and digital PRs. There are some affiliates that use it, but I think what we've done in the past year is based off of everything that is going on in the space. We've decided to kind of lean into where we think we can add the most value when it comes to kind of understanding what that end user, the ideal end user. I think it's who is going to get the most value out of this. So sure, we could sell to link builders, and we still do. But really, I think the old-fashioned link building methods that people used or try to exploit, for lack of a better term, they're kind of going to the wayside. And that's pretty evident with like the helpful content update last year decimated the kind of guest post sites that just existed for guest posts. So like that was a big customer base, I think, for us is, and still are. But I think if people really want to succeed in this business of doing, building content and trying to get links and mentions, they have to kind of shift their focus. So long-winded answer here, but I think it really is thinking about who is going to get the most value out of what you have to say. Otherwise, you're just kind of putting stuff out there and adding to the noise, right? So, and it's easier said than done for sure, and easier for me because I'm in-house, I think. I think it's a tough sell sometimes when you are an agency. If you get hired to do something and you have to kind of convince the business that might not be the best approach. But yeah, when you're thinking about the target user and the end user, I do think you're going to get the most out of what you do if you're thinking about the quality and just making sure that they get the most out of what you're writing, I guess.
Yeah, you talked briefly about persuading people in-house about the value of what you're doing. And I guess one of the challenges is traditionally in business, things are often measured by the volume of what you do. Sales calls, how many sales calls have you made today? Outreach, how many people have you outreached today? But you are a fan as well of reaching out to people less. So how do you justify that? And how do you go about doing that to ensure that you have the same or better results?
One of my jobs, I think, this year is to kind of focus on answering that question, I think. And I've started doing a lot of research into the data that we have. And this is a very specific answer to one of those questions of doing the less is more approach with outreach. Let me get into this because it's really interesting. Like, I think there's this idea of the like spray and pray approach where you reach out to as many people as you can because volume is going to ultimately be the thing that gets you the most hits, right? But, I got access to BuzzStream data and I analyzed billions of emails and found out that basically the open rate decreases and the response rate decreases as volume increases. Basically, what it's saying is these people that are spending more time curating their lists and sending highly personalized outreach is really what's going to move the needle. And I think on the flip side of that, like sending too much is kind of hurting the industry as a whole. Journalists and link builders. I mean, I get pitched stuff all the time and it's just noise at this point because none of it is personalized and, none of it is really relevant to me, or very few emails are very relevant to what I do and what I talk about.
Is it possible to automate personalization?
Somewhat, but not really. I think you can have shortcuts for sure. Like you can get the meat of your templates down, this is the angle I want to take, but you're not really going to be able to automate much of the personalization because that's what makes it unique. Now, there are some people that say, don't personalize to journalists. Like there's degrees of personalization, I guess I should say, David. It's like when you say personalization, what do you mean?
Well, I guess it's a message that resonates with you. I receive loads of LinkedIn outreach, loads of messages, and most people I will probably ignore. Most people I can read 2 or 3 lines of their message and think, okay, it's just a message that you've sent to loads of people. Occasionally I will see a message that makes me think, well, they've possibly actually checked out what I've done in the past and they've written something personal based upon that. I'm just wondering if it's possible to use AI to automate that, to incorporate elements within the message that makes me think that they've checked out what I've done previously.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can get it to the extent of like, it can save you time in doing that research. Like I could go into your website and say, ask ChatGPT to look at SEO in 2025. What are all the topics he's covered? What are some topics that remain uncovered? Where could I provide an alternate take? Where can I, fit into this so I'm not adding to the noise? And so I think that type of like using AI as like a research buddy can help. But if you're fully relying on AI to do it, I mean, I've seen terrible examples of this where it's like, I've had somebody reach out to me talking about the weather in Greenwich, Connecticut, where I live. And it's like, okay, you clearly went into LinkedIn, saw that I was in Greenwich and used AI to pull in the weather or something. And like none of the rest of the message had anything to do with what I do. It was like a sales call or sales email. So there are degrees of this. And the reason I asked you too, David, is like personalization. I think, it could be as easy as using the person's correct first name, like, do you ever get messages from people calling you Dave and they call you Dave and you go by David all the time? You're going to know that maybe this person's trying to cut corners and hasn't done their research. So I think there are degrees of this, and yeah, I don't think it can be or should be automated as fully as some people might hope, unfortunately.
I guess it depends on how large your target market is as well. If your target market is only maybe a couple of thousand companies, then you don't want to be automating too much, because if you alienate them, then who are you going to reach out to once you actually get to the end of that list?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the big thing too with when you think about it with outreach, you can easily kind of get yourself blacklisted and just kind of hurt your success later. If you're reaching out to the wrong person right now because you want to try to hit some number in your head, I need to send 100 emails, I need to send 1,000 emails. And this person sees, oh yeah, here comes Vince Nero again. It's probably the same old crap. Or they might, the worst case scenario is they hit spam. They send you to the spam folder, then you're never getting seen. You're hurting your chances for sure, especially when you have a small list. But I think overall, I mean, agencies run into this all the time, I think. I've heard of email senders that will block you. I mean, there's plenty of new requirements. Google, Yahoo, and Microsoft all now have recently released like email requirements for what they call bulk senders, or people sending 5,000 or more emails in a 24-hour period. Have these very strict kind of guidelines that they have to do because they're trying to fight this type of mass produced outreach. And I know we're kind of focusing in on one aspect of it, but I think this is a very important aspect because it is indicative of this problem across the board of just there's so much noise in especially email. But I mean, I think you can say that this is the case with content, AI. You could really use this idea of being too much noise across the board with content marketing.
And you also advocate a reduced number of links, or to actually try to focus on quality of links, obviously, rather than quantity. Where's the sweet spot? Because obviously you don't want perhaps just one link pointing to your page, but you don't want thousands of irrelevant links as well. So how do you know the ideal number of links that you should be trying to build to a particular page to rank it for a fairly competitive term?
I think that you kind of maybe hit on the key there at the end, which is looking at your competitors. I mean, because there's so much that goes into it, and every category, every industry is going to be different. But I think probably one of the clearer ways to look at it is looking at your competitors. I had someone on our podcast that talked about the way he thinks about this, Nathan Gotch, the way he thinks about link building. I thought was really interesting, of like, what are your like your top 100 targets? And basically, if you can focus it in on that, and then spend a lot of time on those 100. And you build that 100 by looking at your competitors. Where are they getting links? What seems to be the most relevant to your industry? And so that's kind of a shortcut, I think, to your answer, but it really is going to depend, because one link might move the needle. We've seen the Google leak last year talked about things like, they had relevancy scores in there. The kind of big takeaway for me was this passage about getting links from highly clicked sections of a site that is also updated a lot. So take that to mean, say it's a news site, say you're ESPN or some sport website, you want to get your brand mentioned in the sports section because that sports section probably gets a lot of clicks and it probably gets updated a lot. So like those types of links seem to be valued more by Google. I think AI is kind of throwing a wrench into all of this because we don't really know what to make of citations and links and all that. But I think what it's getting people to think about these days is maybe it's not even the link that matters. It's just being mentioned in some of these places. So again, look at where your competitors are being mentioned and kind of lean on that. If you can get mentioned more than them, to me, let's simplify this whole thing. If you're going to, look at your competitors, if we're getting mentioned, you want to get mentioned more, right? So that to me is the shortcut to your initial question, I think, is the competitors.
So Vince, what's the key takeaway from the tip you shared today?
The key takeaway, focus in on what is really going to move the needle. And I think that's going to be spending the time to do the quality outreach, to write the quality content, to get those quality relevant links. And that is where we're going to have success in 2025 these days.
Vince Nero is Director of Content Marketing at BuzzStream, and you can find him over at buzzstream.com. Vince, thanks so much for adding your additional insight to SEO in 2025.
Thanks so much for having me, David.
I've been your host, David Bain, and you've been listening to SEO in 2025 Additional Insights, a Majestic series that complements the original podcast, video series, and book. Find out more at SEOin2025.com.